Welcome to Seniors on the Move. We're going to talk about Tai Chi. You may have heard of it, but you don't really know exactly what it is and what it's good for. And I have Bill Riordan today with me. He's an old friend. He's been doing Tai Chi for at least 32 years, Bill, would you say?
Yeah.
I'm just going to read you a little bit about him. He's practiced and taught Tai Chi for 30 years, correct? He and his wife were looking for an exercise class. They wanted to do some kind of exercise. Again, we're going back about 32 years. He enjoyed the teacher as well as the students and found Tai Chi intriguing. It is fascinating. He also liked learning something new, like most of us do. So one of the students found that practicing Tai Chi relieved his work stress and his headaches. Is it going to do that for everyone? Probably, not necessarily, but it is relaxing,
it has to
Bill.
Help.
Yeah. All right, wonderful. It is a martial art, and Bill will talk about that just a little bit. But he calls it a soft martial art, and it is used sometimes medically for stress in hospital settings. Bill is currently teaching at the Shrewsbury Senior Center, Southgate Continuing Care Retirement Community, the Triborough is it YMCA?
Yes.
Okay. And he has taught at the Worcester Art Museum, so he knows what he's doing. As far as our agenda, Bill, where do we start? Tell me a little bit about the beginnings of Tai Chi. What was the purpose of doing Tai Chi?
Well, yeah, there's a couple of, you asked 2 or 3 questions all at once, but Tai Chi goes back probably 400 years in China.
Didn't know that.
That might be considered like the modern
Yeah.
era for Tai Chi.
Okay.
But things like that have gone back maybe 4,000 years, as evidenced by designs on pottery showing people exercising or 2 people. A little bit like the urns in Greece, for instance.
Sure, yeah.
But Tai Chi, few people realize that it's actually a martial art, not just a series of exercises based on a martial art. It's a martial art in its own right. But the martial arts aspect is meant for self-defense. It's not meant for first strike. It's meant to defuse or push away, and only then counterattack. It's not meant for first attack.
Okay.
So virtually all Asian martial arts are self-defense.
Oh, okay.
Plus, we don't practice martial art. We don't practice Tai Chi as a martial art. We practice for health and relaxation. As an activity, not so that I can go into a tough neighborhood and, spout out, whatever, make ethnic slurs, for instance. That's not what it's about. People don't go out to look for a fight and pick a fight.
So it's
we don't get into that at all. It's almost a social get-together. We get together, we talk about the forms, we talk about the difficulty, the little finesse. So it becomes almost like a hobby in itself.
It does, all right. What is the difference between yoga and Tai Chi? Or is that?
Well, yoga, the purpose or benefits of yoga and Tai Chi are about the same.
Okay.
That is, your balance improves, your leg strength will improve, your range of motion will improve. How you get there is entirely different. Tai Chi, we don't do anything on the floor. There are no mats you need to bring. Everything is standing up, unless you trip on the threshold walking into the room. So
not that it's funny, because it's not. But interesting, yeah.
Yoga is easy to know what to do. It's fairly physically demanding. But anyone off the street, that could be me, can go into a yoga class and fully participate. Because the teacher will say, okay, sit down on the floor, pull up your knees, put one leg over here, put your other arms over here, look over your other shoulder, now hold it. Tai Chi, there are no holds, there are no stops. So in yoga, it's easy to follow the teacher because the teacher is telling you what to do one step at a time.
Okay.
Tai Chi says step out, do this, push away, do that. You can't even see all the things that are happening because you don't even know what to look at. So yoga is fairly easy to know what to do, where to put your feet, arms.
Okay.
It's fairly physically demanding, some of the things, especially downward dog or upward dog, or you're doing a lot of things on the floor. Tai Chi, on the other hand, is fairly mild, physically in doing the forms. What the problem comes in, and difficulty, is knowing the sequence. It's like learning a whole choreography for something that takes quite a few.
Good word for that. Yeah.
I do a long form. Takes about 15 minutes. I do that every morning. There's a short form that a lot of people learn at first. Takes about 4 minutes. But it's a sequence, a prepared, prescribed sequence. You go from one form to another. One form blends into another. And it's really a pantomime of pretending to defend against an opponent.
In slow motion, like you mean, like in
Well, it is intended to go slow. It tends to go slow so you can be more precise. You also get more benefits for the muscles. You can do curls like this, for instance, but slow curls and deliberate curls are better. So the movements are intended to be more defined and precise.
Okay. But as far as falls prevention, which I think is extremely important as we age, how does that work? Is it because you're standing on your feet for so long and you're building strength in your legs, or?
It's part of building strength. Both yoga and Tai Chi build strength in the legs.
Yeah.
But Tai Chi, you're actually moving slow enough that each step you actually have to balance. Walking down the sidewalk, you don't even think about balance. But in doing Tai Chi, it's done slow enough that you really have to balance.
Okay.
And even the balance part of it, before every class, or at the beginning of every class, I go through a balance exercise. Just mostly standing on one foot, and then making circles maybe with the other foot, and switching, or even just lifting one foot off the floor. Looks simple,
Sure.
but it isn't.
It's not.
It isn't. But in Tai Chi, you're not only lifting a foot off the floor, you may also be moving your arm. In fact, your arm the right arm will often go up with the right knee. And being a martial art, just moving the hand like this is not just like waving the hand, or that's what the script calls for. Imagine a fist coming at me. I push it away. It's defend. So Tai Chi, while a martial art, and all the ingredients are in there, but it's first defend and then counter strike. So if you do something like this 300 times, 400 times, or maybe 1,000 times in a year, in an odd situation, if someone is drunk, you're at a wedding party that night, for instance. Often people get to drink too much, even people that are nice during the day. They get belligerent and they want to start a fight. Instead of escalating the whole thing, you just push it aside, so you de-escalate it. So while Tai Chi is a martial art, we don't spar with each other. We don't throw each other around. We don't do joint locking.
Yeah.
In fact, we do. Go ahead.
When you have a chance, when you finish what you're saying, I'd like you to give us an example of joint locking and the difference. You don't do it in Tai Chi, correct?
They're in there, or they're implied, but we don't practice joint locking.
You don't, okay.
Joint locking, it's easy it's not much if I turn your hand outward, but if I turn your hand inward, this is the one that's difficult. So even when we diffuse an incoming threat, I turn it in such a way that I twist it So it kind of like diffuses the whole situation right there, because the person can't add to it.
Yeah.
Can't, throw a second punch. He doesn't land the first one, so he's got nothing to say about or do with the second punch.
And where do the names for these different movements come from?
A lot of it comes from animals or the heavens.
I thought so. Yeah. Yeah.
When some of the different forms, including both weapons and sword, for instance, they might have names like 7-Star Punch. They might have Rhinoceros Looks at the Moon.
Oh, wow.
That's
pretty interesting, yes. All right, if someone decides they want to try this, where is the best place to go? Senior centers teach also, as we know.
Well, there's a few places. I teach a form at the Burroughs Y.
Okay.
And there's no charge for that. If you're a member already, then just show up. It's Tuesday night at 5:30. We teach Yang style.
Oh, there are different styles too? Oh, boy.
Well, there's 6. I'm going to digress a little bit. There are 6 major styles.
Okay.
And most of the names come from a family name.
Oh, okay.
The style that you find most throughout most of the world is Yang style, a family name. And that goes back about, well, I don't know how far back it goes, but it was, we'll say, more standardized and documented maybe 400 years ago. But there's also Sun, Wu, Chen, Bagua, and Zig Yi. You don't have to remember those.
No, this is just for my benefit. I want to become an expert.
But Yang is the most popular. 95% of the people in the world do Yang style. Yang style is more open, big frame, big movements, instead of Sun or Wu, which are smaller movements. Yang style is easier to teach because the movements are exaggerated. They're big.
They're big.
You can see where the arms are. There are no little secret hand movements. The next most popular is Chen. Chen is somewhat more of a harder martial art, but none of the Tai Chis are as hard as like Kung Fu or karate. Kung Fu is Chinese, karate is Japanese.
Oh, see, interesting. Good to know that. But, we've been talking about seniors a lot and how great Tai Chi is for falls prevention. But what about other age groups? And why are they doing it?
Anyone would actually benefit, but since it is fairly slow and sophisticated movements, teenagers, younger kids, they tend to make fun of the slow movements. What are they doing? Why don't they just speed it up? That's not the intent.
So it's the energy factor, and that makes sense.
So kids need Kung Fu or karate where they're jumping around, there's more power, there's more obvious. Teenagers like bold things, loud colors, loud clothing.
Everything's big or everything's blown up, right?
So, they like heavy metal music, for instance. They're not, I'm boiling this down too much perhaps, but they don't like, we'll say, the classical music. So you have to get a little bit of life under your belt before you want to take up something that's fairly simple. But it's interesting that younger people that do take up the hard martial arts, Kung Fu or karate, as they get older, as they get into their 50s, and they find out that things are hurting someplace, they will come to Tai Chi and enjoy it and find out that it's more sophisticated and more intriguing than would first appear. Although people that do Tai Chi almost never go over to, I'll call it the dark side. They don't go over to the hard martial arts.
All right.
Tai Chi is just a wonderful thing. You meet people. We get easy, nice people in classes. And my longest friends now, my oldest friends are Tai Chi people.
They are.
People that, I don't know, you just seem to connect with people. But all facets, all walks of life enjoy Tai Chi.
All right. One thing before this show is over, because I'm enjoying it myself. You mentioned that if someone does take a fall, how does Tai Chi apply to that?
Well,
Is it
people
going to
that
be
do Tai
not
Chi,
as serious?
well, people that do Tai Chi are more aware of their body. They're more aware of what hurts or what doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
They're-
Okay.
Every motion in Tai Chi, you have to put your arms and legs and stepping in a particular place. It's already moving. The whole Tai Chi is movement from start to finish. There are no stops. There are no rest places. So they're more used to like moving and being aware of where they're moving to. So if they trip and stumble and fall, they're just like easier. They just like go along with it. So people that do Tai Chi fall less often, dramatically less often.
Really important.
And when they do fall, the injuries are less severe.
That's
Because
wonderful
they know
to
how
know.
to just like
Yes.
go along with it. They don't tense up and fall, like an oak tree falling over. A number of studies, more than one study, many, many studies.
Another question. That's such good information. I want to thank you for that. But what about the breathing? Is it like yoga where you do a breath with each movement or part of a movement?
We do
or?
separately, like we do a balance exercise before doing Tai Chi. There's something called Qigong. Qigong is literally just breath work. So it's a series of movements, breathing movements, where you breathe in, inhale, exhale deliberately, exhale, then exhale, inhale this way, exhale. There's one that stretches this way. It's a good arm stretch in itself, but
Sure.
the aim is not so much to stretch the arms. The aim is to stretch the lungs in a diagonal way and to stretch the lungs this way.
So it's for the interior too, not just
Well-
for organs. It's
Well, let's come back to the organs, because that's a good subject.
oh
in
good.
itself. But the breathing, we bend over and touch the toes, or at least go in that direction. But again, it's not to bend over and stretch your back muscles. It's to squeeze the lungs like an accordion.
Oh, interesting.
When we do something like this, and the shoulders turn more than the hip does, it's to twist the lungs, to torque the lungs. Although it's a good stretch in itself, but it's a lung stretch.
Wow.
So the lungs, the hands
Yeah.
and arms just go along with the gag, but the emphasis is on the breathing. When we get to actually breathing in the forms, it's fairly natural to exhale when you're going forward. If you were to push a car stuck in the snow, you wouldn't inhale as you push. It's almost impossible to do. You can't go and push the car. You can't. Your body already knows to push, puff up your cheeks even. So, excuse me. So every motion where we're imitating an actual fight, defend, and then counterattack, as the arm or body or intention moves forward, it's exhale. When you come back to do another form, that's inhale. And again, as you go out again, that's exhale.
So you have
So
to
the breathing
kind
is-
of coordinate it, the two together.
That's a really good word. Everything you do is coordination, including the breathing.
You're finding more men trying Tai Chi.
That's a funny comment too. In a yoga class, if there's 30 people, you may get one guy,
Oh,
but
God.
there's going to be 29 or 30 women. In a Tai Chi class, for my entire 32 years of doing this, there's never been an all-female class or all-male class. It doesn't happen. Women, it turns out, like the Tai Chi. Women like learning that it's a martial art. They like the movements. It has innate beauty itself, but they like the idea that it flows and it looks beautiful. And they like that part of it, but they also like that they're learning to be just a little bit dangerous. So in relation to Tai Chi, we also do Tai Chi sword or Tai Chi
right.
stick. And the women like playing with swords as much as the guys. The guys like swords, but guys have made wooden swords as they were kids for a long time. But when women get into a sword class, they like it, and they're in it, and they do it as well as the guys. There's no separation.
What is the size of these swords?
Well, they look about the normal size, but usually they're wood.
Oh, they're wood.
Or
That's
or they're collapsible, like an old-fashioned car antenna that you can go.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Or you can pull it out.
Okay.
They took that idea and they just made it bigger sections. But it collapses down to something this long. But it will pull out to about 32, 35 inches maybe. And there's a staff that's about 6.5 feet tall. So it's just another aspect. There's 4 aspects of Tai Chi. One is the form that you do.
The form, that's the word I've been looking for. Okay.
Well, yoga has pauses, a pose rather.
Oh, okay.
Well, pose implies stillness. You pose for a photograph. Tai Chi has forms. But so 8 of the long form that I do, there's 108 separate forms. That one blends, one flows into the next.
Wow. It seems a little complicated, but you have to start somewhere. And
There's no doubt that it's complicated. And people ask me, is it hard to learn? Well, it is. There's no getting around that.
But it's good for the brain
But
then.
it's doable. You have to pay attention.
And it's something new, something different. And it's been proven to be healthy, good for us, all aspects of our body and
The
mind.
people, when they get into it, like the learning process itself. It isn't something you learn so that you can walk away and say, you got it now. You practice it, and you keep going to class because, one, it's fun to go to class and meet your friends that you've started with.
Sure.
So I don't know if there's any downsides. I don't think there's any downsides to doing Tai Chi. You know, people all ages need to do exercise for health. But
Sure.
walking on a treadmill is boring. People I hear this many times. People buy a treadmill, motor driven, all the computer, the times and everything. After maybe 2 or 3 months, they do it every other day. 4 or 5 months, they do it once a week. 6 months later, it's in the corner gathering dust, and then it's up for
They're
sale.
hanging their clothes on them, right? I mean, they're usually in a basement if people have a small home.
People that learn Tai Chi tend to stay with it. They tend to do it. For one, it's fun to do. It is an exercise, but it's an exercise you don't mind doing because you like to get the finesse.
Yeah, it's
You like to do it better and
graceful.
better.
Graceful, is that a good word, would you say?
Oh, definitely graceful.
Even though it's a martial art, it's been slowed down. So
Yeah, it's been slowed down. But the reason for doing it slow, if you do this, we'll say in a year, after a year, you've probably done this probably 1,000 times.
show me again. Palm up or no?
Well, it depends on what's happening. But
Okay.
just the basic idea. If someone is like pushing your face in, you just go like this without thinking about it. You don't say, what do I have to do with this one? Is it like this one or this one? It just happens. Like driving a car, if a dog runs out in front of your car, what do? Let me see, is that the brake or the clutch? No, your foot goes on the brake. There's no.
It's just automatically.
You practice these things, and I don't expect to ever need this in my life. But again, it can happen at odd moments,
Sure.
or people want to get in your face, and instead of, you just like diffuse it.
But
Yeah.
you do this, you do this every single day. Do you do it in the morning when you get up? Or?
People have to pick their own time. I do it first thing in the morning. I shower, get dressed, do Tai Chi, then breakfast.
And how long do you do this for? How long is your
There's a
workout?
routine. I do some warm-ups that might take 5 minutes or so, but the sequence takes about 15 minutes. That's what takes the length of time that's why it's so long to learn. You know, people ask me, how long does it take? And I say, well, it might take 2 or 3 years. It might take 10 years. It might take, you never do finish it. But while you're learning, you should enjoy the learning process itself. Just enjoy being in class and being with your people, your classmates learning the Tai Chi.
And it's movement. It is exercise. It's a form of exercise.
There's a lot of movement. Once you start, finish the opening, which may be just an inhale breath, like lay all your cares away. As soon as you start the sequence, there are no stops. There are no places.
It's continuous, and I had trouble with that, memorizing.
That's where the trouble comes. They're not physically demanding to do, except some you have to balance on one foot. For instance, if you stand on one foot, you might go up like this. Well, just for those few seconds that you're doing it, you might be kind of wobbly. But you'll get better at that. You get better with anything you do will get better with practice. Tai
Yes.
Chi will get better, will feel better. You'll get more range of motion. You mentioned earlier about people in my class. I've had one guy who had a pain in his hip for, I don't know, several years. It wasn't there unless he took a little bit longer step than normal. But over the winter, I taught at work for a while. Over the winter, the next spring, one day he said, "My pain, it's gone." It was a surprise. And people
Wow.
also come in from work. Most of the classes I teach, they're in the evening, like at 5:30. So people come in from work. And maybe they come in, the boss yelled at them, they had a bad day, they come in, they're grouchy. And they just get in the routine of just doing the balance, doing the breathing and learning the forms. By the end of the class, they're bright and cheerful, and they don't know when the headache left. It just,
So
they
they're
feel better.
more relaxed. We've just got a couple of seconds, Bill. I could listen to you for an hour or two, I'm sure, even longer.
Oh, we're just touching the surface.
And so we're going to have to do another one of these shows, I think. You're going to be very famous when we're through. I want to thank you for coming today.
This was a pleasure
I mean
talking.
it. Finally, we could talk to each
Tai
other.
Chi people love to talk about Tai Chi.
Oh, thank God. See you next time, folks. Thanks for joining us.